You know, every now and then, a single question pops up that perfectly captures an entire national mood. And right now in France, there's one that's ignited an absolute firestorm, really splitting the country in two. It's this huge debate about money, about fairness, and, well, about the future of France itself. And it all comes down to this one simple phrase. Is it Nicolas who pays or Vincent who loots? Now, this phrase, it started on social media, but believe me, it is so much more than just a meme. It's become the battleground for two totally competing visions of France. On one side, you've got this image of a hardworking professional just being bled dry by taxes. And on the other, an economy being plundered by the super rich. So to really get what's at stake here, we've got to break this whole thing down. All right, so here's how we're going to tackle this. First up, we'll figure out who this Nicholas guy even is. Then we'll dive into both sides of the argument, look at the solutions they're proposing for the country, and finally, we'll ask the big question. What does this whole debate in France really mean for the rest of us? Okay, so let's get right to the heart of it. First things first, who is this Nicholas we keep hearing about? So just to be super clear, Nicholas isn't a real guy. He's more of an archetype, a powerful symbol for this growing sense of frustration. It's this feeling, especially among high-earning professionals, that all their hard work is just going to prop up everyone else. And this whole story, this narrative, it's really built on two main claims. The whole Nicholas narrative really boils down to these two core ideas. First, that a tiny slice of the population is funding the entire social safety net. And second, that the top 10% of workers are paying for like 70% of all the income tax. But people who defend the current system say, hold on, that picture is totally misleading. So let's look at that first claim. See, the counter-argument is that in reality, the way social protection gets funded is actually way broader. It's not just one small group paying for everything. It's funded by social contributions that pretty much all workers pay. Then there's a social tax called the CSG, which even retirees chip in for. And on top of that, there's the VAT, the value-added tax, that literally everyone pays whenever they buy something. So the main point here is that the load is spread out a lot more than the Nicolas story would have you believe. All right, so the idea that just a few people fund everything is, well, it's pretty shaky. But what about that other claim, the one that says the top 10% pay 70% of all income tax? Well, here's the interesting part. Supporters of the current system don't even argue with that. In fact, they say, yep, that's exactly how it's designed to work. Yeah, for them, this isn't a bug in the system, it's the main feature. The whole point of a progressive tax system is that it's designed for higher earners to contribute a bigger slice of the pie. They see it as absolutely essential for funding public services and, trying to shrink that gap between the wealthiest and everyone else. So the big question is, after paying all those taxes, what's left for that top 10%? Well, on average, they take home about 6,000 euros a month. And the folks who support the system, they point to that number and ask, is that really a life of hardship? Their argument is that, yeah, the system asks a lot of them, but it's not designed to be punitive. And this quote from the politician Manuel Bompard, it just perfectly captures the moral and even the economic heart of their argument. He says, you never calculate the cost of misery. What he means is, the cost of not having the system would be massive poverty. And that's not just a moral issue. It would absolutely cripple the consumer economy that everyone, Nicholas included, relies on to make a living. But of course, that's only one side of the story. For a whole lot of people, and their numbers seem to be growing, this system doesn't feel fair at all. They look at it and see something that's just fundamentally broken, super inefficient, and ultimately unsustainable. I mean, check out this pretty provocative quote from the editorialist Charles Consigny. He said, France is the USSR that succeeded. Wow, what a statement, right? But it perfectly frames the counterargument that France has basically become this state-run economy where crushing taxes just stifle any kind of individual effort, new businesses, and just plain old economic freedom. Let me throw a number at you. 199. What's that? Well, that's how many days the average French employee has to work just to pay off all their taxes and social charges for the year. Just think about that for a second. That's more than half the year spent working for the state, not for yourself. And critics say, how is that not a massive disincentive to work harder, to innovate, to grow an economy? And look, this isn't just a gut feeling people have. The data from international comparisons backs it up. France's total tax rate as a percentage of its economy is one of the highest in the developed world. It's way above the average for other big economies,
And for the critics, this isn't just some abstract number on a chart. It's a real weight on the economy that they say discourages investment and even pushes talented people to pack up and leave. And this leads us to what is maybe the most powerful argument against the whole system. Critics ask a really simple question. If we're paying record high taxes, why do our essential public services, hospitals, schools, even the police, feel like they're falling apart? And for them, the conclusion is pretty stark. The state isn't just expensive, it's also incredibly inefficient. So when you have two completely different diagnoses of what's wrong, it's really no surprise that the proposed solutions are polar opposites. We're talking about two totally competing paths forward for France. So, how do you fix it? Well, the two paths couldn't be more different. On one side, you have the call for a fairer contribution. The idea here is to tax billionaire wealth more heavily, bring back some social contributions for businesses, and use that money to protect and fund public services. Then on the other side, you have the call for a freer economy. That means cutting state spending and bureaucracy, reducing taxes on companies and individuals, and raising the retirement age to get more out of the private sector. It's really a fundamental choice between the collective and the individual. So the big takeaway here is that this whole Nicolas debate, it's not just a silly meme and it's not some dry, abstract economic argument. What we're really talking about is the fundamental social contract of an entire nation. And ultimately, this debate, which seems so specifically French, forces a question that every modern society has to grapple with. Where do you find the right balance? Is the path to prosperity found through collective solidarity, where everyone contributes to the greater good? Or is it through individual liberty, where people are free to succeed on their own terms? The answer France chooses is going to define its future, for sure. But it also holds a really important lesson for all of us.